Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Barry.
What is the latest on this, on the Australian, from Australia's perspective? Tell us first of all what you know of those Australians who are listed as living or missing in the area.
Sure, Barry. Well, there are something like 11,000 Australians in Japan in total, and in the affected areas we have something like 189 Australians who are registered. But there would, of course, be several hundred more Australians who are not registered. At this stage, we have not made direct contact with many of those 189 that are registered, and what we are going to seek to do over the coming days is to make that contact. As you're aware, yesterday the National Security Committee of Cabinet decided to send a search and rescue team. We also decided to send extra consular assistance, particularly Japanese speakers, that can go in with the search and rescue teams. And of course our embassy officials in Japan are seeking to go to the affected areas when it is safe. But at the moment we can't give any greater clarity. I can say that there are concerns for those that are living in the area naturally. I mean, if you see the footage here, this is on a scale which is almost beyond belief. So we are doing everything within our power to assist Australians in Japan. One of the good things that's happened overnight, Barry, is that 4 or 5 flights have left Narita Airport, so Australians who want to come home are coming home. And of course, we remain in contact with the Japanese authorities to discuss what additional assistance we can provide, in addition to the research and rescue and the sniffer dogs, which are on their way to Japan as we speak.
And does that extra assistance also include field hospitals and disaster victim identification teams?
Yeah, quite possibly, Barry. We are very skilled in this area. As the National Security Committee said yesterday, and as I indicated, we do stand ready to provide additional assistance. You can see that the scale of the disaster is such that there will be a very significant casualty count. The damage to communities is substantial. So, of course, all of us in the global community will have to cooperate to provide the maximum degree of assistance to our Japanese friends.
And Kevin Rudd said this morning that he's also offering them nuclear experts. Is that something that Australia can offer the Japanese, given that they have nuclear power stations all over the country?
Well, this morning I've been talking to the head of APANZA, our nuclear regulator, Mr. Magnus Larsson, just about this incident, particularly at one of the reactors in Fukushima. This is an incident which is rated, there's a scale of 1 to 7, Barry, that they have for these accidents. In one of the reactors, the scale is set at 4, which is an accident which has local implications. Our nuclear regulator is working with others internationally to model, to seek advice, and of course with the International Atomic Energy Agency as well. So a lot of discussion, a lot of consultation going on, but in this community talking about this accident, particularly at one reactor, but as you know it's a bit wider than that as well, which is why the Japanese authorities have set up an evacuation zone, if you like, of 20 kilometres, and of course our travel advice is for people not, I repeat, not to travel to the area.
Now, you would have heard Kevin Rudd there saying that he's demanded of the Japanese an urgent briefing on the precise status of these reactors. Is that a fair thing to demand of the Japanese right now? They have got quite a few things on their hands.
I think it's a reasonable thing for there to be a discussion amongst international partners about this matter, and that is a discussion which is going on right now. It's a discussion I was just having before with Mr. Magnus Larsson about the consultations that are going on with the Japanese and in the international community.
Yes, but what he was saying is that Australia and the rest of the international community is demanding this. We haven't heard that from the Secretary-General of the United Nations.
Well, what I think is that there will be lessons to be learnt from these accidents that have occurred. But of course, our focus at the moment has to be on rescue and it has to be on recovery.
Well, you've already told us what the National Security Committee of Cabinet decided yesterday. Was that part of it, that Kevin Rudd would go and demand this briefing from the Japanese?
I think Mr. Rudd has been doing what he has to do, which is to discuss these matters with counterparts in Japan. We are a very close partner of Japan. The relationship is very strong. It's developed very strongly over the past 50 or 60 years, and we are working very closely with them. And I think that's what he was indicating this morning. There is a very close working relationship, and we certainly stand ready to provide any more additional assistance that should be required.
More broadly, do you think there is a need for Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd to get their lines right on Libya?
Well, I don't accept that they don't have their lines right, as you put it, on Libya. The fact is they've both got the same position, that a no-fly zone is one of the options that has to go to the Security Council. Slightly different words, same position, Barry. And the fact is we've got a very big agenda before us. Not just the rescue and the events that have occurred in Japan, but also a very big domestic agenda. I just don't think that this is the issue that some have blown it up to be.
There's far more than a cigarette paper between the two positions. Julia Gillard is talking about it as an option and seems to be going off it anyway. Kevin Rudd was advocating that there be a no-fly zone.
In the context of a range of options going to the Security Council, Barry. That was the context, same position.
Well, that's not really the way he put it. He said it was the lesser of two evils and he was advocating it in the region.
Well, there's a range of options, Barry. I think the position is the same. I think this has been blown out of proportion. They've got the same position. The government's position has not changed since it was announced in the Parliament on the 2nd of March.
Well, Julia Gillard said in the US she hadn't spoken to Kevin Rudd. Should she talk to him more often? And as one of Julia Gillard's advisers said, that Kevin Rudd doesn't run press releases past the Prime Minister's office. Do your press releases go past the Prime Minister's office?
Well, first of all, I don't respond to unsourced commentary that's in the media, and certainly we do have a degree of cooperation on these matters, as we should, and they do talk, Barry. The fact is that they were in different time zones, and you know how these things are done. If the main people in the cabinet are in different time zones, other people will be doing the talking. Indeed, overnight, Barry, I've had to get a lot of people doing a lot of talking while I was asleep, preparing to come on this program, getting information. So that's how it works, particularly when people are in different time zones.
But I ask the question again, though, all of your press releases surely go past the Prime Minister's office before they're circulated.
They certainly all go through a central process, Barry. That's the way it works. And sometimes, Barry, even with my press releases, there may be reasons that they don't. But I can't comment on what's occurred in relation to any particular press release from either myself or anybody else.
All right, just on the carbon tax now, and the poll suggests that you got off to a rather bad start. Have you got a plan B?
Well, I don't think this debate was ever going to be easy, Barry, but it's a very big reform which is right for the country. It's a very significant economic reform because those countries that make the transition to a clean carbon economy will be those that win the prosperity of the 21st century, that drive the investment in renewable energy, drive the investment in technology, and that will drive the jobs of the future. Barry, we just had some fantastic job figures last week. 330,000 jobs created in Australia in the last year. 50,000 in the month of February, despite everything that went on with natural disasters. If we want to keep on doing that sort of thing, we've got to continue to transition our economy. This is one of the biggest economic changes that we must put in place to ensure prosperity for the future. The science is there. I know it's disputed by sceptics like Mr Abbott and others. The science is clear, and we have to embrace this reform as we embraced big reforms in the 80s and the 90s to drive productivity in our economy. That's what we've got to do. It's a fight we're up for. We're not going to take a backward step, and it's a fight we can win.
And will you need to win that fight? Will you need to spend millions of dollars on advertising?
Well, we haven't ruled advertising in or out, but I was going through these matters. They were raised in the press last week, and I discovered that John Howard had in his last budget, before he went to the people with his emissions trading scheme, which Tony Abbott supported and didn't say that it would destroy jobs, that John Howard had a $50 million allocation in his last budget to advertise his emissions trading scheme. We haven't taken a decision. There's certainly a need to get the correct facts out there, particularly given all of the distortion caused by all the right-wing shock jocks and the other sceptics. Big battle on our hands. It's a battle we're up for.
Yeah, but because, as you say, it's a tough battle. If you were to introduce advertising, would that come under the category that you identified once before on the super profits tax, that you would argue that it's a national emergency, extreme urgency or other compelling reason?
Barry, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of our advertising guidelines. I'm not saying we're going down that road. What I am saying is that we haven't taken a decision in that area. There's a long way to go in this debate. Mr Combet has already indicated this morning that we're setting up a climate change commission. We're going to get out there and argue the case on the facts, argue the science, argue the economics, and get on the front foot on this issue, because it's so essential for future prosperity, so essential to the creation of jobs in our community, and so essential to our children and our grandchildren. All those climate change sceptics out there that want to deny the science, they can keep their head in the sands, but we're going to get with the 21st century, Barry.
And if you were to go down the advertising path, would you at least undertake not to advertise until the details are at least known and agreed?
Well, Barry, we're working our way through all of that detail right now. I noticed there's been some criticism that we announced an emissions trading scheme and then didn't provide all of the detail. Well, the fact is we're out there consulting on the breadth of the scheme. We're out there consulting about a carbon price, all of the things that people want to be consulted on. We'll do that in a methodical way. We'll go through it in a reasonable way with the community, and we'll put a final emissions trading scheme up. And, of course, people can make their judgment. But we're up for the argument, Barry, because we're right. It's good for the economy, it's good for the country, and it's good for the environment. And when you're a Queenslander and you look north to the Great Barrier Reef, you understand that climate change is something you've got to deal with.
OK, well, can you give us a sense then on the decision-making timetable? When will you take a decision on the price, and when will you decide on compensation?
Well, these are matters that go through the multi-party committee. We've just already decided that there will be compensation. What happens with emissions trading is a few of the largest polluters have to buy permits. That delivers revenue. That revenue is then delivered, if you like, to households and industry by way of assistance. That's how the scheme works. We're working our way through that detail. We want to get it done, but we've got to do it in a consultative way.
Thanks for your time this morning.
Good to be with you.